Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with our guest, Scott Edinger. He is the author of a brand new book called The Growth Leader. We've been talking about that in part 1 of the show, and if you didn't catch part 1 of the show, we really encourage you to go back. It's quite enlightening, including the emotional source code of how Scott became one of the most trusted advisors in leadership globally today. He writes for the Harvard Business Review. He's been on there over 40 times. He's got 3 best-selling books. New York Times. The guy's got accolades up the yin-yang with a story that starts off in a way that you couldn't possibly imagine he will come to where he is today. Now, where we finished up in part 1 of the show was talking about this thing called the sales experience. And where I sort of brought it to was to ask Scott about, we understand everybody's talking about the customer experience. We've now got customer experience officers. We've now got whole departments dealing with the customer experience because we know how important that is. But what about before a person becomes a customer? Then you might say, as I would have said before, well, that's marketing. The marketing is leading to the person becoming a customer. That's true. But there's a piece in the middle here that is this conspicuous by its absence. I really want people to understand the distinction between these things. Like I said, marketing, customer experience, and right in the middle is sales. Can you give us an example, a story of some really good way of understanding this?
Yeah, and I do think that there is this sense that we don't talk about the sales experience. They just get out there and sell and make the numbers and do it. So there's this sense among too many leaders, I will not say all because I've certainly encountered plenty who don't think this way, but that we have all of the strategic work that happens at headquarters. We design big products and services, and we create marketing, and we use big data, and I've got my finances, supply chain management, all of the strategic stuff. Sales, I need to just get them the hell out to sell. Go pitch it, close it, make it happen, right? And yet, the sales experience is a huge factor in whether you win, lose, or retain business. So you asked for a story. I have one that I share in the book. It's a fun one because I live in Florida. Here, where I live, it's hot, so air conditioning is a strategic purchase, much like the early bird special is. And a few years ago, I was in the market for new air conditioning for my house. It's a 100-year-old house, lots of windows, craftsman-style house, 1.5-story floor plan. So the upstairs is one big loft space. 100 years ago, we did not have a lot of insulation. So all of those factors make this place maddeningly difficult to just get to be one comfortable, consistent temperature. But I say it's the old house charm I love about the place. And what I thought I needed was a larger and more powerful AC unit. Wrong. What I needed was actually 2 AC units, but a completely different configuration rerouting the airflow. So I meet with a couple of AC companies, say with a smile, all referred by cool friends, and we discuss the issues, and then I proceed to tell them exactly what I need for the larger system. I'd say if you're listening here, by the way, how often do your customers come to you and tell you what the solution should be, or tell you exactly how you should implement, but you see a bigger picture. You know there's more to the story, or there's a better way. That is an opportunity. So that's one way to be thinking about this a little differently. But the first 2 companies, they come back with proposals for exactly what I told them to sell me, larger, more powerful AC units. But the sales experience with the third company was totally different. So this sales rep's name is Gary, and he starts by measuring all of the windows. He's calculating the heat load in different parts of the house. And then he's measuring the airflow and the temperature differentials between the 2 floors and all of the different rooms. And then he's testing the ductwork like every 5 feet. After all that, he comes back with a proposal that is 3 times the cost of the other 2. I don't know about you, but air conditioning is slightly more satisfying than buying a roof for your house, like just a little bit more fun. So not something you want to spend a lot of money, but it was clear that's what I needed to do. It's a solution I never would have come up with on my own. At 3 times the price, though, you're like, hey, wait a minute, pal. Gary was also able to tell me why just buying a larger AC unit, like I was suggesting, wouldn't get the results I wanted. Would have pushed more air through the vents, but some rooms get cooler while other rooms remain uncomfortably warm. So here, the sales experience is what's making the difference. That was the real kicker in the whole thing, is that the other 2 companies, and if you compete in a market where you have any difficulty differentiating on product, services, even advanced capabilities that start to look the same in the eyes of customers, the other 2 companies could have sold me the exact same thing. They're all distributors of the same equipment manufacturers, have the same products, same prices, and they all have pretty much the same installation services as well. It was the sales experience that made the difference. It was rich with insight and value and helping to use expertise to solve my problem in a way I never would have done so.
So you brought up something that's very interesting, and I think we've all experienced it, and that is that we either go in with no idea about what the solution is for whatever the thing is we want. I have no idea what I want, but I know I need a solution. Or it seems like we go in with a very defined idea. I need X. What I hear from you is the sales experience is the elevation of that salesperson into a strategic positioning by the organization and by themselves as a level of expertise. So it's not just that I'm a salesperson, I being whoever's in sales, but that I'm coming to you as an advisor, as an expert in this, as opposed to a guy trying to make a commission, as opposed to a generic, as you said, in a commoditized thing like air conditioning where companies are all selling the same thing, that this person has showed up and said, here's my expertise. Now, I want to ask you, do you think, honestly, based on what you learned about Gary and how he was, do you think he would have come to you and said, if it was the right answer, you don't need to go with that, you need to go with something cheaper? Do you think he would have done that too, if that was the right buy?
Because I stuck with Gary for a decade after that, I'd say yes.
Right.
Because of the way that company ends up operating. And that is the ongoing sales experience. Like I bought lots of things. I live in Florida. You buy air conditioning stuff, even if not the full unit. You spend a lot here to stay comfortable. So they definitely had opportunities to upsell, cross-sell where they didn't because they didn't mean to. So looking out for what was right, keeping an eye on what's right for the customer, what the customer is trying to accomplish, or what your client's objectives are. And I think most importantly, you use this idea about elevating the sales role. I think this is important for leaders who are listening. If you've got a sales organization, I'm going to take a 50-50 chance that you're thinking about sales wrong. You're thinking about it as distribution and transaction instead of differentiation and value. And if you think about it that way, your sales experience becomes very different. And it goes from a simple connection to here's how we generate revenue to here's one of the reasons why clients choose us. That can make a wildly different outcome for your sales culture, for the results of your business.
So if I'm going to summarize what I heard, please correct me if I'm wrong. What I've heard is that in a really great sales culture, your job is to provide value before there's a transaction.
Without a doubt. That's a wonderful sort of succinct explanation, is that our sales organization is about value, not transaction. By the way, think to yourself, if you're listening to this now, how often do you see that? It's rare. In fact, it's noteworthy when we do see it. They stand out like Gary. So I'm not saying it never happens, but too often we think of sales culture as dialing for dollars, pressing the flesh, closing, pitching, closing, presenting, instead of problem solving, strategizing, working with clients to achieve great outcomes.
You and I have talked about this before. I hang out on Instagram occasionally and look around on Instagram, not because I particularly enjoy Instagram, but because I'm fascinated by learning from it. On there, people are making a lot of money. There's a lot of people that are making a lot of money, and they're doing it 60 to 90 seconds at a time. And how are they doing that? It's exactly what you said. They're providing value consistently over and over and over again. And that value is a sales experience. I don't think of it as sales. I think of it as education. So that's why I said to you before, I feel like what you're actually trying to have us grasp is that sales is education that provides value, that allows for that person to then say, I really like the way they took care of me. I really like the way they educated me. I really like the way that they understand the situation. So I want to buy from them, or I really don't like them. And I don't like where they're coming from, and I don't like what their education's about. They're saying I should only eat vegetables, and I love meat. Or they're saying I should only eat meat, but I love vegetables. Whatever it is. But it's very clear where the value is in each of those experiences that is a sales experience. Am I grasping this, Scott?
Totally. I've had this luxury in my career. I've had a chance to observe over 1,000 sales calls, watch the interaction between buyer and seller, talk to buyers afterwards about what they found value. Not once to ever hear the way the salesperson described the features and benefits. So articulate. I never hear the capabilities presentation I laughed, I cried. Better than Hamilton. It's like the walking, talking brochure doesn't have much value. What does have value? Helping us to think about things differently, helping us with an insight or perspective about how others are handling a similar challenge, helping to solve a problem with an approach that maybe you hadn't considered, an unanticipated solution, or when you start to approach something thinking, I'm going to do things one way, but then through the conversation, you start to look at the issues differently and then find a better way. And in all of these cases, we are not talking about the pitch. We're not talking about the close. Those things are antithetical to business. By the way, most salespeople know it doesn't work because they try it, but they're managed incorrectly. They're managed wrong. So that's why I say these are not sales issues. These are leadership issues. And when leaders don't conceive of the sales organization, the sales experience, think about it correctly, their decisions, their choices about how to lead, manage, recruit, pay, develop, deploy, all of those decisions that leaders make about sales end up going the wrong direction. It's a leadership issue.
So let's go directly to that. It's a leadership issue. As you said, CEOs and executives are often disconnected from their sales forces. There's a need for sales experience. So I'm a C-suite executive listening to this and I go, light bulb's gone on. Okay, got it. This is not marketing. This is not customer experience. This is the thing in the middle, which is the sales experience, which is actually around knowledge and giving a crap and actually caring about the customer and offering them something that may be better. Even if it, and I would go as far as to say, even if I'm not the best for you, I know somebody who is, that could be a really good thing. I used to guide people around this all the time. I'd say, I will say to you, how can I be of service to you? Let's say you live in my neighborhood. You say, I need my roof fixed. I obviously don't know anything about fixing roofs. Not obviously, but I really don't. But I say, hold on a second. I get my phone and I call my buddy Greg and I say, hey, Greg, are you there? And he goes, yeah, I got a friend here who needs some help with his roof. Can you help him? He goes, sure. I hand my phone to that person. That's a sales experience that I've set up for that person. And I think that in the way that you're talking about it is that if Gary comes in and he's doing all this stuff for you and your air conditioning, and you say, I'm thinking about putting in a new shower, I would bet that Gary would say, I probably know someone. And there's a pretty good chance that you are going to trust whoever Gary says because of your sales experience with him, even if it's not inside of his company.
Yeah, there's this great power in helping the customer achieve their objectives, whatever that looks like. Now, the selfish and proper response that ought to go off for some leaders listening is, but I don't get paid for putting in the shower there. Fine. The incremental effort that cost you to help the referral or to help make a connection to a subject matter expert who can help pays off down the line. Oh. It pays off in loyalty. It pays off in slicker negotiations that aren't so price contentious. It pays off in a lot of ways. So you got to think about the sales that are 3, 4, 5 years out now occurring in the future, not just the deal in front of you. And that's a huge factor because, of course, no matter what you're selling, it's probably got a connection to something else. And customers will have needs. Your clients will have objectives for things that you can't do for them. The degree that you can be a broker of capabilities, a source of referrals and connections, huge value.
Talking about this sales experience, I want to be part of the sales experience for Scott Edinger. I want to be part of the sales experience for anybody who has a subject matter that's not my subject matter, because guess what? They will become a sales experience for what is my area. So it's not just building trust with a customer, it's building trust with experts or people who provide services.
Sure.
That you don't. We get into these very narrow tunnels about, I got to take care of me and mine, as opposed to we and ours, which all feeds everybody else. There's that great analogy you've all seen of an image of 6 people sitting in a circle with 5-foot spoons. And you can't feed yourself with a 5-foot spoon, but you can feed someone else. But if you do that, everybody feeds everybody. And that's the analogy we really need to understand about this, is that it's bigger than the transaction. It's the sales experience that leads to the transaction, even if the transaction is not now, but maybe later. I love that you're bringing this to the surface. So again, I know I've got to keep harping on this. I'm an executive. I'm listening to this. What do I do today inside of my company besides going out and buying the Growth Leader book, by you, going on your site, watching the videos, which I highly encourage you to do. There's some great resources there. But besides that, what do I do right now? Because now the light bulb's gone on. Marketing, customer experience. now this sales experience, what do I do as a walk away, like bite into this right now?
First thing to do is go look at your strategy and see, is the sales experience anywhere in it? Most good strategies address critical questions about objectives, competitive advantage, target markets, and ideal client profiles. But nearly always missing from these models, except the strategy model and the growth leader, which you can go right out of there, is the answer to this question: how does our sales experience create value? I would say if you want to take this seriously, you need to make the answer to that question a critical part of your strategy. Might be almost as important as what you offer and who you offer it to. So if you think about that question, and I'd encourage you to think if your customers would not be willing to pay for that sales experience, maybe you're not using it as strategically as you could be. One of my former bosses, a guy named Neil Rackham, best-selling author, been selling in a few other books, used to ask this question: would the customers pay for your sales call? Not the products, not the services, but the sales call, the sales experience. Write you a check for it. Lofty goal, right? My response was usually something along the lines of, hey, boss, it's hard enough to just get them to write us a check for the actual things we're trying to sell them. But there is a really important and strategic point underlying that question. All good strategies answer key questions of your business. If you are a leader of an organization, you need to be answering that question. How does our sales experience create value? And all the things that Dove and I have been talking about here, from insight to expertise to connections, subject matter expertise, referrals. How are you helping above and beyond the product and the service? Where is your value add? That will answer that question.
I think that when we think about sales, inside of the stigma is it's learning how to close. It's all about the close. And what I love about your work and what you're saying is the close is important, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is for the person to want to buy from you because they've had such an amazing experience that the close is kind of like, yeah, obvious. When I'm teaching people sales, I say, you probably learned the yes ladder. Get people to say yes 7 times. Are you having a good day? Yes. Do you like this? Yes. Just get them into that mindset. And I always say, that's a terrible strategy. Terrible. I understand it was very popular, but it's terrible. And they go, what's a better strategy? And I say, the of course ladder, where you deliver something, and they go, oh, of course. And when Gary walked you through that air conditioning thing, I'm guessing that by the end of it, you were like, of course, that's the only thing that makes sense. It's 3 times the bloody price, and that's insane. But of course, this is the right answer because you've showed me how I'm losing heat and the airflow. And it's that, of course, that comes from education. In all of that, one of the things that you talk about that I really like is this understanding, this idea of emotions that inspire. I think that the sort of dirty word is emotion. It's a bit better now because of emotional intelligence, but it's still somewhat of a dirty word. And if you put emotion and sales together, then it becomes manipulation. Not what I see it as, and I certainly know it's not what you see it as. Talk to us about emotion and inspiration in this context.
I'd like to come back to something you said about closing and then get to emotion if I can. One of my first job searches after college, I interviewed for a sales role, and I got turned down because the sales assessment said that I had what the president of the region told me was high closing reluctance. It sounded like some kind of a disease. I was like, you have high closing reluctance. It sounded awful. Like, yeah, what is this? But the notion of applying pressure to make a buying decision, completely unappealing to me. And it's counterproductive in sales environments. Nobody wants to be pressed for the close. You executives who are listening, here's the leadership issue. When I ask executives, tell me about the salespeople you want to hire, I always hear I want people who are hungry, fire in the belly, ready to close. And I respond often by asking, when was the last time you had a sales call where someone really needed to close you? And how good was that? How valuable was that? So I think that there's a really important connection here to what you're talking about. Closing is not really especially valuable in sales today. I'm not saying that we would end any good business meeting without saying, what are we doing next? What's the next actions here? But the emphasis on closing is counterproductive in sales. And it's driven too much, not by salespeople, but by leaders who are asking, what you're going to close this quarter.
I want you to say that again because you just punched it in the head, but I want you to say it in your words, which was that the closing style of yesterday is no longer appropriate. And when you've had that sales experience, it's not pleasant. I want people to grasp that. Say it again for us.
It doesn't work pressuring people to buy something on your timeline instead of theirs may have worked 30, 40 years ago. It does not today. Buyers won't tolerate it from you. They can go elsewhere. They have too many other options. And you know that. But the reason why your salespeople are doing it is because of you as leaders. They're not doing it for the sake of it. They're doing it because of the pressure that you're putting on them to say, you've got to close this quarter, this month. Can it be higher? Can it be more? Can you pull that deal forward? I'm not going to suggest for a second that there isn't some level of motivation or some motivating pressure in every business. But the excessive focus on the numbers closing for a given timeline, week, month, quarter, year, create that counterproductive environment. Closing doesn't work. It fails.
Brilliant. Any CEO, any executive who has dealt with a high-pressured salesperson has not had a good experience and has probably walked away and gone, I'm never going there again. And they're interviewing for those people.
So let me just get this straight. You want someone who's hungry, motivated by money, fire in the belly, so that they can create what kind of experience for your buyers? How's that going to be?
Yeah, that's profound. Like right there, that's the key that I think is the myth. We're all like, I want hungry salespeople. And we don't think about, well, what's it like to be on the other side? Because we've all been pissed off at a hungry salesperson. It's bugger off. You're just getting on my nerves. You don't give a crap about anything about except for me writing the check or giving me my credit card. That is so profound, Scott. Thank you so much for that. And I think that moves us to this around this inspiring emotion.
In my first book, The Inspiring Leader, the research was really clear that no other behavior was more powerful, more effective for leaders when moving people to action. When you think about sales, Dan Pink writes about sales as moving people to action in his book, To Sell is Human. Inspiring and motivating is about moving people to action. Number one behavior among leaders who are considered to be the most inspiring is the ability to use emotion, to make an emotional connection. Now, whenever I share that, I go out of my way to highlight, I'm not talking about big displays of emotions or excessive emotionality or oversharing or group therapy. Not at all. Talking about connecting as human beings, not task-focused robots. And there are many ways that leaders can use emotions to make that emotional connection, from bringing energy and enthusiasm to concern. I'd say even anger effectively. When I talk to people about anger, I'm like, yes, even anger. Nobody's positive all the time. That's just not real. But the best leaders can get behind that anger and use it to communicate their frustrations, their concerns, their fears, the things that are usually driving the anger. And they can use that to improve performance, to galvanize attention and bring people toward them, not repel them. Investing in people's growth, developing their talent, working from strong principles. Leaders create trust when they demonstrate integrity. There's a lot of different ways you can inspire and use emotion to move people to action. But it all starts with making that emotional connection as a fellow member of the human race, man. We're here as people. I'm interested in what you're trying to do. You tell me about that. Maybe we can work together and figure something out. And if we can't, it's fine too. I'll find my people. You'll find yours.
What do you think your secret sauce is, Scott? When we started out the journey with your emotional source code and how you've begun and Harvard Business Review, et cetera,
I'd love to be able to say it's the ideas, it's the insights, it's the models or perspectives that I work on with clients. But other consultants have great ideas, good models, good perspectives. The thing that allows me to succeed with my clients, a secret sauce there, is what we were just talking about. From the emotional source code story we discussed in episode 1 there, I am able to make a connection on what's important to my client, to understand how they tick, to understand what's going to make a difference for them as leaders, as executives, as professionals. And then I'm able to get to work with them on that once we've connected them. I think that makes all the difference in the world.
I do too. And again, you're back to being personal, being human. As a leader, what's something that you're still working on within yourself? Because your book is called The Growth Leader, and I think that oftentimes people think of it as a destination. Well, is a tree finished growing? Everything that is alive is growing. That's why I asked that question.
I struggle a lot with this idea of acceptance of self, of the circumstances of life, of the world around me. I wrote an article for Harvard Business Review on the business side of it. Good leaders know that you can't fight reality. I see a lot of my own behaviors that are counterproductive, a lot of behaviors in my clients that are counterproductive, of people at large counterproductive, because we're not accepting the reality of things. I don't know who said it, but there's something about you've got to be able to accept reality before you can change it. I think it might be Carl Jung. You've got to be able to accept the reality of circumstances before you can change them. I struggle with that. I really do. I want to change everything and get it the way I want it. I'm very willful about that. And often when I get tripped up, that's your source.
Beautiful. Thank you for that vulnerability. Again, it has been a pleasure and honor, sir. Thank you so much for everything that you shared on today's show. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the enlightenment you've brought to this experience, this sales experience, and this very clear distinction that I think that was so muddled for many of us. And you really brought it home beautifully. Thank you so much for that. Before we finish, please tell everybody again where they can find out more about you, about your books, and about all the resources that you have.
I joked with you last time. I really do try to make it very easy to be found. It's just my name on the internet. Scott, S-C-O-T-T, Edinger, EDINGER.com. You can find everything there. The bio, the book, 100 articles for free, videos, you name it, the newsletter archive. I also hang out on LinkedIn. I'm not a huge social media fan. I know you like to go on Instagram. I roundly dislike most social media, but I do enjoy LinkedIn here and there. I do a live stream once a month. Love to connect with people there as well. So you can find me in those two spots, and by trying not to oversaturate.
Well, again, thank you so much for everything you shared. It's really been valuable. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And for you, dear listener, remember, those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of that tribe. Leaders committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know that they must tap into what drives human behavior, and that is the emotional source code. I am Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, leaders, and nations how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified actualized meaning is the monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant, so please do us a favor. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever it is that you tune into it from. And if you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us such a success. It doesn't happen without you. We really appreciate it. Every review counts. It matters. And if you share that show, it makes all the difference. And here's the deal. If you got a lot out of this, I want you to share it with other people, because I think there's a lot for you to learn in this particular episode. Write a review and put some in there so I can let Scott know how much that you enjoyed it too. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the sales experience. That it's not marketing, and it's not a customer experience, but it is about really caring for the people who have not yet created a transaction. Remember, it's value before transaction, as Scott has very clearly pointed out. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.